Steven here today. And today what I wanted to talk to you about is the all fucking swaggly, majestic, divine, all-pervading concept that I've had in my head, in my membrane for the last 8 to 13 months. Finally coalescing in a way that I feel like might be worth me pressing recording this video, called wave theory. Now originally my plan for this was to actually put out two pieces of content before I put this one out. One on green systems, essentially a project that I came up with for my computer architecture class. That was essentially about the blueprint on how to engineer a system that is green oriented, meaning whatever energy is put out is channeled back into the system in a way that's so swaggly done that it is as if not only energy is being created, but it's as if it's being magically enhanced and added by some form of whisk or wickerism or whatever sort of enchantment magic word you have permeating through your brain, simply by fact of its perfect perfection in the way it's coming out, in the way that it's thought about, conceived, in the way that it's actualized, realized, manifested, and all things preceding and following, thus crystallizing in its perfection, for lack of a better word, and by that causing one to reap the endless eternal benefits that comes from such an effect. And then followed by that would be another video on essentially the evolution of what I chose to pinpoint or focus on DOS, right? MS-DOS, and more particularly file systems, and how it's actually one of the most undervalued yet overabundantly giving game-changing inventions of our centuries, right? And essentially showing why, demonstrating, tracing the evolution, and then all the things that came about, and then finalizing in how much it has so much more to give that we're not even giving or allowing the chance and space for it to come about. And then through that, one would have a much deeper grasp of the higher level concepts and visions that I hope to envision and eternally essentially record and communicate, transcribe, if you will, from some higher dimension, higher whatever, through this video. And by that you'd be able to better understand where I'm coming from, what is the point of all this, where it's going, more importantly, how much dollars is actually being left and how easily it can be fixed, and more importantly, just how shatterable, malleable, and effervescently changeable, for lack of elegance, this reality actually is. Anyways, even though that was the plan, something is pushing me and urging me forth to put it out anyway. So here it goes. How I'll start this out is by pointing to the pieces of content on what I call natural rhythm, and how the earth itself is operating at a frequency, right? And how for one's higher or infinite potential to actually just first being taken aware of, meaning for you to just actually just understand or ponder just how fucking money you are, you have to be able to channel or find your pathway to that frequency, right? So I've talked about it in the past, and again, I highly advise you just do a search through all my content and my magnanimous, pardon me, disorganized by purpose body of work, and try to find the bits and pieces left on it, right? Promise I will touch more on that in the future, but what I have put on it so far is enough. And then the second thing is the piece of content on the elements, the subtle bodies, cultivating your life force, particularly the four elements video, the cultivating or hustle like a spec ops soldier, the understanding or cultivating a worldview, right? And any piece, the swag phonetics video, and then any piece of content alluding to the sense of a body driven by a spirit that is operated by a man-child, that exact verbiage, and operated by a child, the inner child, any piece of content alluding to that concept, specific exact words, and backed by the strength of man. Specifically, particularly the exact text or status that I made on it with that exact quote. That will give you a better foundation and a stronger sense of how to go about reading and disseminating, internalizing, and unleashing the awesomeness that will be this video. So to cap off, or to start, those pieces of content are essentially my failing but discombobulating because of my shitty English attempt at highlighting the importance of one team consciousness, of one consciousness, of this idea that we are slowly but surely coming to realize that is, chi is all, or energy is all that ever is. And the delineating, that is, take a pencil and here's your canvas, and the fact that you draw the square causes new form to come about, are the reasons that we have a world that is such, right? One with a variety and a multitude of manifestations, forms, sounds, a spectrum, if you will. Or put in other words, or in a more multi-dimensional form, a wave. It's not simply a line, because the line would blend in, right? But it's ever so shaping, ever so moving. And so by that, one is able to see, experience, and more importantly, be in a way that is uniquely their own, uniquely ever presently the most valuable thing possible. The whole, you are a special snowflake. And so by that, always inherently value giving, right? In other words, you're unique and you're awesome because you're you. And without you, we wouldn't be able to say me too, in the sense that the me would not have value. If there's only one, then there would never be another one, right? Sorry to get all Confucius-y, but I hope you follow. Now, to go back, my point in highlighting it or explicitly saying that is that just as you tune your instrument, your music instrument, your guitar, to a frequency of 442 hertz, if one is to essentially reach that harmonious ting-like tone, that songs of the heavens kind of attribute to their playing, to their music, to their symphony, to their hymn, one is also able to do the same for their mindset, and through that, by that vehicle, their spirit, their soul. What this would mean is not like you would think, oh, we are guided or mind controlled by some one entity that calls all the shots. Rather, the fact that there is such a possibility of one thing that always connects us all, we are always able to be not just as we are, not just as we want to be, but also be in a way that is in perfect tandem with the other person next to you who also seeks to be and do all those things that you so ever perfectly desire and wish to do. What this means is, in the same way that when you add 1 plus 1, you always get something greater, when you act in tandem with that, a mindset, a spirit that drives to always make things epic. And I'll just end it as that because, anyways, it will cause you to just act in those states of mind, access those faculties, tap into those talents that a lot of texts deem to be Christ consciousness or godlike or Buddhahood, things that allow impossibleness to be normal place, right? So by you being able to reach that place within yourself and almost live there as if it is the thing that you were always, not only the thing that you always wanted to do, but the thing that you knew there was no other thing but to do. Everything from that point becomes, for lack of a better word, golden. Again, the whole you're so money and you don't even know it. The way that you look at the world becomes golden because now you're only a blessing in your thoughts and your ideas. By that, the ideas, because they come in chains and they are driven by this energy that is so fervently only cultivating that which is good, that which is positive, that which can assist it, that which is fruitful and favorable, and thus that which is eternally an asset. It becomes what we know as beliefs, which then become chained together what we know as a perception, or if you want to get colorful, a mirror that is clouded or colored in the light that is so fucking good. And by that, as if shooting a light beam, all things that emerge from that mirror through, that is life coming at you and you seeing life through that mirror, and it essentially changing the nature of that energy, that experience, whatever it is, becomes only something that is fortifying. And then on top of the fact that the spirit that is emanating, that is at the reign of all of these things, is only good, and more importantly, in tandem with all that is, it becomes the only and best thing that thing can possibly be. It's almost like reverse engineering every iota of your essence to only be the greatest possible thing that it can be, and nothing but that. Now, to go back, I mentioned, or I use the word particular, delineating, because in that one is hoping, or my hope is that we come to awareness of how disempowering words, or words that wedge, words that unnecessarily box us or make us see one apart from the other, when it is when it's definitely not only when it's not necessary, but when it's actually hurting oneself. One is able to realize that the greatest gift that one can have or receive or even give is the knowing, the truth, that there is no such thing as I or we or this thing, this singular thing. There is only just energy, and the only beauty And I use that word particular as just the honor to witness how its encapsulation in this particular time and space causes what we call uniqueness to ripple through the nethers, if you will. That is world, life, and show something different. It's kind of like understanding how cool life and even music is because it's unique. Now, to go back to the whole tuning thing and natural rhythm, when you realize that operating or seeking to move in tandem with the frequency of the earth, or let's get even more in tandem with the planetary body in which you reside in, is the ultimate goal for any life form, because through that, friction of all sorts is absolutely eradicated. I mean, think about how awesome it would be if you're in this, you're in that roller coaster ride where that spins round and round, right? And all your life, whether you know it or not, you program yourself to act in a way that you're always adding drag force in the ride, when by simply just being and tuning into the frequency at which that roller coaster is operating, by even just turning your body even more into the same direction that the roller coaster is turning into, you will reap so much more from that experience that you will ever possibly imagine. And on top of that, energy is added, especially or more interestingly in moments that all conventional wisdom says that it should not, where the fact that you have to breathe or you have to produce energy to think and feel and energize the senses, where conventional wisdom says that that is an expenditure, the flow of you going in flux will cause it not, because you're just going with. So I can go on and it gets super romantic and I'll lose myself. And so to essentially ensure that I always use swaggies of your time and all resources, I will just reface or preface or remind you of all the videos and the piece of content that I brought up before saying all this, just for the sake of. To move forward with that, understanding that then is then the new game, right? Because when you tune your guitar, the game is to turn the knob at the precise points, right? To add the tensions on the string at the right angle, right? Or even more, to get even more particular, to manipulate and interface with the reality of the instrument you currently have in such a way that you move your instrument in the right manifestable or in the right form that is necessary to essentially manifest the energy output of the instrument that you want from that instrument. And in that, you realize that your body is just as awesome, so fucking awesome. And why is it not so much more the most awesomely thing that we do? That is, why don't we celebrate or talk more, rant more how awesome we are? And that's what we should be doing, as opposed to all the bullshit that we actually do, right? So going back now, that frequency thing and natural frequency and how energy is. Let's move forward now into my foray of this idea of wave. I use the word theory simply because I'm a noob. I'm always going to be a student. I don't know shit because I haven't been on Earth long, and so I have so much more to learn. But these are just my thoughts. I've always believed that whole old school principle of catching yourself or forming yourself from the get, whatever it is you're doing, and just focusing on understanding what is the right go, what is the right flow, what is the right mode, what is the right step, what are the right biomechanics to what we call the perfect step, or humbly the right step, the right pass, the right way to move, the right way to essentially act in a way that is achieving the desires that we currently want in that time and space. In other words, going from A to B, how is it to be seen when it's manifested? So I always use the example of soccer, right? Because that is my dream, to play professionally. And how I illustrate this is understanding that your mind has to be at ease, and it has to visualize you perfectly connecting with who you're passing the ball to. But more importantly, you have to be so enthused with the flow that occurs, the chain and sequence of events that arise when the thought or the idea or the desire or the intent and intentions marry together to perfectly not only pass the ball to your teammate, but to help score the goal. When that is there, right, the energy that is so bountiful. It's like a child just essentially happy that he is just playing, right? With that childlike spirit, you humbly know that not only must your pass be fucking swaggy as fuck, it can't be away from his feet. It has to exactly be where he is in space-time. But more importantly, it gives you the wherewithal and the foresight and the clairvoyance to think 10 steps ahead about how is it that this pass will be done in a way that when when it nears him, it can be trapped. The ball can be trapped really effortlessly. The ball can be repositioned so swaggly. The ball can be redirectioned in force and energy and everything in a way that it's oriented towards scoring a goal. It's oriented towards hitting the target. It's oriented towards achieving the result that we're there for, which is scoring, putting the ball in the opposing team's net. And so that means that, again, those ever timeless truths of empathy wins all, compassion leads all, and most importantly, love, which I defined previously as may you be happy. Just that, in that, with that, collides all forms of internal and external obstacles in a way that they do not interfere with that which needs to be done in order to do this again perfectly. So my pass will reach him and it will be right, and he will trap it and do right with it, and on top of that also be given the added benefit of having my force and energy and put it on the ball to where he will have more options than I had because I am added, and in a way, as cheesy as it sounds, I am with him in that, right? That whole when two are gathered, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, so that's the multi-dimensional idea of this point of tandem, of being in one, right? And why seeking to live with and in natural frequency should be the ultimate goal. And I hope that aid really serves to kind of coalesce and crystallize all these things. Now, going back to that love, what I love putting in English has that old school swag of Karate Kid, up, down, right? Wax on, is because on some level I unconsciously realize the importance of how bare bones your body has to be trained muscle memory first, meaning no matter how cool you are, how good you are, how talented you appear to seem. And I say in that really weird confusion. I don't even know. I'm risking losing a lot of people because I know that if you are listening, it will make sense. Way. So that you will understand that when one is able to put all of these things in perspective, the fact that there is a decision that needs to be made whenever whatever comes about becomes just joy and fun and not something to be stressed. Rather, it becomes literally, in all sense of the word, a blessing, because you just realize this is right. This is moving things forward. Why? Because you took the time to bare bones muscle memory train yourself to always act right, especially when mind had a disconnect between body, right? If body is always programmed in a way to always do right action, then the moments when mind and body are at conflict or at disconnect, or when mind and body are at a disconnect occur, then that foundation, and that is the definition of foundation, will come about and support it, guide it, not only serving as a heuristics as in the past, but be the foray, the North Star that always, through its weird childlike way of showing how this can be seen as a hooray, shine the path and essentially make that which is to be done and that which will last beam ever so strongly in the darkness of the chaos of trying to figure out how to do what when mind and body are at disconnect. And again, I say it, you may have to replay it to understand why I say it that way, because oftentimes when we're at conflict, especially inner conflict, and that's always what I'm talking about with something, it's always most of the time something occurring up here. You don't see why the idea that is being so fervently pushed by your body is the thing that your mind feels at dis-ease with, especially when you know yourself to always find a way to keep them in unity. And my point, and the whole point of this, is that what is seen is not always the truth of it. And while I'm always using those primal words, and I use the word primal particularly because in that, just as I mentioned just now, a few minutes ago, to my buddy who's really here, chill, super cool, even allowing me to do this here, there are certain words that transcend language itself, right? Kind of, again, the importance of that swag phonetics video. And despite whatever political bullshit we might be dealing with and allow ourselves to succumb to, there are certain things that just preserve and maintain their integrity through all time, right? For one of them, that is one of them, right? There are plenty and sparse at the same time words like this in our vocabulary that no matter what you think, feel, day and age you live in, they will hold their truth because they are so based in objective reality that they can't ever be robbed of that. No matter what sort of deep, unconscious, subconscious, whatever it is, brainwashing and mutating and deprogramming one has undergone, right? The pain body is a real thing, meaning when you go through something and you're afflicted by it negatively and it has not been dealt with, what people have called purified, for lack of better words, it causes ramifications, or if you want to get simple, cracks in that so golden colored mirror that I mentioned earlier to come about and be seen simply by virtue of them being energy, right? 1 minus 1 is a lesser result. And it's the same way with everything. So by that, all of those accumulated 1 minus 1s that have not been turned around to become pluses have caused us to essentially not see things as objectively, and thus act in ways that are not objectively good. By that, we have a non-objective, or as I hate saying, because it sounds so holier than that, but it's really not. And I'm just using those words for the sake of elevation of awareness. Bring your attention to, and then hopefully maybe get you on the chain of thinking about them deeper. I love that word, ponder, right? Of how that really affects one. It's like kind of the realization that Goku had when he was turning Super Saiyan, when the form Super Saiyan 2, like that mid step, that power form, like although the power level that he reached was so much higher than anything he had ever done, probably what most people don't even want to admit, stronger than even almost SSJ4, right? When his tail comes back, simply in sheer raw power. Yet because of spirit not driving, always acting has a loss, has a liability, has a downfall, a detriment to himself by virtue of that being not in tandem. And how the realization that light and chill and keeping things swaggy, as I like to put it, trumped everything, even that ultimate power, to the point that he went back down to his base form, back down to SSJ1, and retrained again, going back down after that to base form, to even more re-ingrain the right form, the right action, the right biomechanic, the right channeling, the right interfacing, the right living with all that is, causing him to reach his true untapped infinite potential and then transcend that form and levels beyond. It's that same thing. And when one realizes that, wow, like what we see really isn't always the realest thing ever, then it's so funny how the way life becomes, the way life is experienced, the way life is even lived changes, right? Because what then is what higher truth is there than what the senses have processed to be so? And that's really where flow, go, pro, all those swaggy ass bros came from, right? Freestyling, rapping, like the art of whatever it is have emerged, because we realize on some level, I guess through divine intervention, because I honestly believe we're that retarded that, like, unless they have just, there's not a millions and sentient beings acting in the background for us to get past so many of the obstacles that literally should have just been our destruction of our species. No joke. On some level, through some mere whimsical breeze, all of a sudden eradicated, and as if by chance or magic, we reach other levels. So to kind of bring this back, understand that there is an importance of finding, and what I want to come to, your baseline, right? I'll keep using that over and over, as fucking nerdy and beaten out as it sounds, because again, it's also one of those other words. And primarily, you know it. You know what the concept of baseline means. I wish someone was here. The she's doing it's so ill. But I'm coming to the concept of baseline, right? Because if you know what the physical baseline is, then you have the blueprint for everything, right? The whole lamp, the golden key, blah blah blah. By just understanding what it is, then you know everything, right? Deviations, they literally become just a fucking swaggy ass freestyle. Dust. Tell him. Come on. Hi guys, this is Josh. But by knowing your baseline, you know all, right? And then going back even more specifically, it just kind of coalesces even better by understanding what your body should feel, the sensation, to the point that you don't even have to pause and look at the micro moment to moment, the micro frame to frame of what a right step, a right pass, a right shot feels like kinesthetically. Then the muscle memory that takes over by that fact, by that virtue, become so awesome in their sheer security and ever providing comfort of knowing that the follow through is all you have to make sure you do, because the dues of having taken the time to bare bones do and grind that fucking right step into the do shines so much more than you thought you could know, that now it's like the coolest fucking flow. Like you literally just enjoy the flow all the time. And I know that sounded really fucking cheesy, but that's it. Like kind of cool in the way I said that. But anyways, it's kind of what I'm leading to, right? So now something that I also wanted to touch on even deeper is oftentimes because people feel that the anchoring or the tying together of the sensation of exuberance with a feeling of, I guess, I don't want to use fleetedness because that's almost like it's callous in the sense that like I want to say knuckleheaded, conceited, and I'm saying it that way so you can maybe kind of like visually see and tie a picture to the process that goes on when we use words that are not properly identifying or labeling phenomenons are actually distinct and completely separate from what we're talking about, but rather they're just umbrelling things, shotgunning mindlessly. And by leaving it as callousness, or by leaving as callous, I'm not doing a good job of actually disseminating what's going on. Because when you realize that, oh, simply because that moment when I lifted, just flayed my arms, kind of like when I was in that mosh pit, right? Over and over, and it felt so good, so free, as opposed to the typical laser focused, ordered, centered, super logical, super precise, step by step moments of my life before and after. Then there had to be truth to that. Then you're missing the point altogether, because the feeling is not just a prayer, but most often it's more of like the after effect. It's almost like there's a pixie, and everywhere she is, she leaves pixie dust, right? And the pixie dust is more of like way, like what you're seeing. The moment you realize that there's a pixie dust, you're actually missing all the moments. You're actually looking at the like the last moments of that event, as opposed to the moment when her foot literally merged with the floor, because she was being so in tandem with life itself that they literally became one. And it's almost like when you're fucking a girl so well that her pussy won't let your dick go. it literally latched on, and then it unlatched simply by virtue of being in respect, because that's just how life awesome is, right? He literally said, it's like, I made you in my image, I fucking love you so hard, literally shed every part and discombobulate myself for you if you ask me to. And even though literally you don't even have to do that, I'll literally let you do what you want. To the point of, even when you die, I won't let you die. Because for me to do that would be a lie. Like, it would be going against my very promise in the fact that I said a word that is love, right? It's just like that. And so, yeah, it latched and then it unlatched, right? And that unlatched, nevertheless, because perfection was left, you can call it a signature, and that is manifestedly experienced in the manifestation of what physical things come about and coalesce and be described or shaped as what we call dust, right? And shining, glimmering, and that which is not common, given its reverence, pixie dust, right? So that, it's literally the end, but the moment it merges, the moment, like it, or the entity that is when two become one, right? All those things happen and can be seen, but we literally, because of our inability to just be and take every moment, that is, fail to disseminate those micro moments. And so what is so fucking magnanimously the thing that our soul seeks to be nourished by is often missed and rather distracted, as I perfectly like to call it, by the after effects, which is kind of funny because it's a really cool program. And anyways, which, funny enough, goes back to that whole steak, not sizzle, and how muscle memory and training rightness is the thing to always remind you. It, like bare bones. It's like tattooing on your soul, on your essence, steak over sizzle. Do it! Just do it! Quit shy! Quit shy! And so that's why I'm always striving, in many ways, saying the importance of baseline and finding that, and why I give respect to all the fucking greats, whether sung and unsung. Basically, anyone that lived before you did, because they had less help than you did. Just that is enough. Oh, dude, yeah, I am Batman. Dude, that was really cool. That was like perfect. Don't be using my sign unwittingly now. Think about it. Because when I come, I'm being my costume. You might see a dick fall out or two. So I'm just kidding. But anyways, that's my virtue, or my, I guess, virtuous strive for what I really want to be, or really want to put back to its place of importance. The level that the level that it requires nothing but.
Hey, we gotta go. We gotta build up.
Okay. The respect for baseline. And so now going forward, once that is achieved, once your foundation is built, then again, as I mentioned, body-mind disconnect become a non-issue. They just become learning experience. They just become opportunities for, and I even stopped in that way because to say opportunities for something more to come about, opportunities for something greater to speak to you, all that, they just, the words pale to show just how big those moments only are, just how much more those moments actually are, and just how it fails to provide the adequate scope using verb or language, linguistics, has a vessel to encapsulate just how epic and more attuned to those moments you should be. So I just left it as moments for that to occur. So again, hope I didn't lose you. If I did, please, I'm begging you, replay it until maybe you catch my drift. And if I didn't, then I'm so glad you're still there. Because then it allows you to realize that, oh shit, okay, so natural frequency, and before that there was some other, leads to the proper building of a swaggy ass foundation, which will carry you through ever so effortlessly in situations and moments that you never even began to envision or never even saw coming as detrimental or maybe conflict causing. Essentially, test or calls upon yourself from something to be even greater than what you currently are. Simply by virtue of the fact that that foundation is so present. It's so presently there. It's like drawing a box and using like a glow-in-the-dark pencil and drawing it so boldly that like no matter what, it can't be erased and it can always be seen. And thus, you never go blind, even when you're blind. Like, anyways, going forward now, this is where it gets really, really awesome in one way for me, because for once I finally feel like everything that's kind of been the foray or the idea, the intent of all this content to come about or to be expressed, or even more particular for me to feel so good about how it's unfolding to the point that I feel like I'm really doing a good job at navigating through my shitty English to really express the extent of what I'm trying to say, even though I know how shittily I may be, how far, so much more further from the target I actually am. The little that I do feel I am perfectly putting out is enough to allow me to feel okay with whatever discombobulated bits that is there, despite my strident or really strong effort to not be discombobulated. And so now it allows me to think about how to approach this other point, because again, I say it's awesome for me, but what I feel often is at this point, I often feel sadness because I know that what I may say next may come off as maybe presumptuous, pompous, like, oh, I'm holier than thou, or I seem to think my way is the only way and other people are not, or even downright just disrespecting other people's right to freedom, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness in their own way, whatever that may be, when 1,000% it's not the case at all. Simply just my lack of dominating quotes, because the implications are perfect in my mind to say that, but more so domineeringly verging on pushing people to just see what I want to see via force or sheer push of will as opposed to my way, which is laissez-faire and letting them accept or wanting to see, regardless of whether or not it's good for them, regardless of anything, right? In other words, I often feel, right, and I'll literally swag cat or capture this vision or this idea, which will perfectly illustrate this point. When I'm talking to music about, when I'm talking about music with other avid musicians who are 10 times more experienced than I am about a particular point of music in a way that is deliberately done so nerd-like or really technical to the point that it's almost as if I'm trying to suck the soul out of it, as if I'm trying to make it this A, B, then up, down kind of thing. The way that it's received shows me that the person that's receiving whatever it is I'm trying to say is 100% sure that I'm trying to essentially teach them that their way is wrong in one way or the other and mine is right. And I will leave it at that, for not only for lack of better words, but because the feelings that arise as I say it perfectly lead me to realize that that is what I'm trying to make aware of, but more so in the hopes that maybe as you're watching this video, having an open mind will maybe come to realize that, oh wow, like he's been talking really weird in the way that if I kind of stop and think about it and what he's saying and chain everything together, he's actually kind of making sense, not in the way that I initially heard him, but more so in a way that I've actually been saying myself, not just to him in my own way, but also to a lot of other people. And that feeling, hopefully, or at least my hope and intent is that it drives people to, again, that word ponder a bit more, right? But to lay it out, and I guess I always put it mathematically, quote unquote, because again, quote unquote, objective reality trumps all, meaning, again, that other video, if you haven't realized how important it's, cultivating your life force, the nature of reality, where basically I mentioned how important it is to understand in your mind, but more so in your body, that objective reality is this. This is an object, this is an object, this is an object, this is an object. I use the word object because it's that much more universally palpable, right? And subjective reality is the fact, the subjective truth, that is the malleable linguistical truth, that is this object is commonly labeled first as cell phone, and thus related to has me to cell phone. This object is commonly labeled first as blinds, windows blind, and thus related to has me to blinds. And how my effervescent or my poignant message behind that video was to show people that the definition or the words, the phonetics that you use in a label directly subconsciously attribute an energy to the object, whether you have consciously decided to imbue that or not. And so the strengthening homework of that video that I imparted, I guess the challenge, the self introspection invited from me to you via that video was to assess all labels, all phonetics used in a label on all object, one by one, for their imbuing, this time consciously, because now you're directly looking down on it. You're directly putting it to the fore and the forefront of all that is you, to see if you are, for lack of better words, consciously imbuing that object with the energy that they currently hold by vessel of the label and the phonetics that you have used to address that object. Now, to bring it back, when one realizes that, oh wow, there is a baseline, this baseline guides me. Furthermore, it's not just about the senses. It's not just about the fact that, oh, I can just put myself in a great state and understand that a lot of good things will come. But then, even though my childlike inner child will always give me the inner confidence to always act in however way I want, it's also about consciously creating exactly what I want, despite, regardless, or even in spite of any sort of external influence or message saying or encouraging or hammering on the point or the need to not do that very thing, to not call that object that label, to not imbue that object with that energy, to not follow what I want, to essentially act in conflict with self and essentially move blindlessly with something else, with something that is externally presented. So in other words, when I'm trying to say that, if you think about how you're being with someone, if you think about how you play music with someone, and you realize that both of you are only just seeking to harmonize, not just your instruments, but your soul, feel each other in the fucking blues, or whatever it is, the tunes, as I put it, then it's not just respect for your talents to swaggly baseline everything, whether it's the instrument, whether it's tuning it right, but more importantly, and another game changer that I'm literally trying to bring to tune the play itself, the way that I play, the way that I hold my energy, my instrument, the way that I output, not just strumming to the beat of the drums, as people always commonly refer to, but more importantly, harmonizing the environment in tandem with the way that my beat is drumming. So I'm not gonna just hit it hard, but I'm gonna hit it with a slap, right? Slap of the bass. Like, it's not just pure respect for your talent to do so, but more so, it's also even better to realize that when one is sharing that time and space for that sole purpose of elevating, right? I'll just, because everything was, then the things that come about will naturally have, I don't want to use infringing because that implies a lot of things, another umbrella, but rather it will have this up-down tempo and beat to it. It will have this overbearing, him talking over me completely stepping on his toes, accidentally or not, at times. Not because of one person greater, not because one person less or without, but because we are all tuned in our way to the natural frequency, and how closely shaped, I guess, how much one lives in that frequency directly reflects on how well they play with the other person. So that follows then that this person will pick up on those small, what I call subtle audio, sometimes visual, but typically kinesthetic modes or modalities of operations that are always there in reality, that come about when, for example, the tone or the overall ambient energy, ambient force produced by our melody begins to shift in tempo or in amplitude, causing a different tone to be heard, a different pitch to essentially arise and reverberate through the natural world, issuing a response from us in one way or the other. So the swaggiest way I always put it, and something that's actually recently, through the help of others, my friend Jason taking me to like these like Latin joints, playing this genre of music called cumbia, right? Which is mostly what I mostly allude to or relate to as like it's not even fast salsa, but it's, think of merengue but with a happy birthday theme or motif to it. So the shit that you would play if you were on the countryside with your ukulele, but because you're not with your girl and your uncle is there with his girl and shit, you won't play as saucy, as, for lack of better terms, as you would if you were just with your girl and maybe your friends. But you will have more of a jovial, I guess. Like, think of like the Baroque times, the introduction of the flute, right? You'll have more of a da-da-da-da-da-da, like a more easy to pick up type of bass line, easy to pick up type of tempo, melody, rhythm to the song. It is that sort of music that genre represents. But what's most interesting is because of that and just my immersal in that, I was actually able to realize that there are so many elements that's directly taken from African and Afro beats and the Afro culture that were also reverberated in, funny enough, people not really hearing it, metal, like goth metal. Think of your goriest of your goriest, like 666 death metal band, and I can shit you not pick you out that very same element, like that very, not just the melody, but literally the very same sound. And the funny thing is, it is an exact representation of this whole point, where what looks one way typically is not, all because of output of energy. And now going back, understanding that, then oh shit, and also understanding concept, simple things that I've mentioned and others like my mentors have mentioned. Time is your ally, right? There's no such thing as, there is no reason why you're not enough. Then the rock star within will realize, oh shit, actually his energy is at this point because he woke up maybe on the wrong side of the bed, or because he has a family and a wife to take care of, or because maybe he just got out of college and he's trying to figure out how to pay or take care of his debt, or a myriad of other human-related factors. It then allows you, again, those timeless virtues: empathy, compassion, love. Oh shit, okay. I'll play in a way that, and this is where swag engineering comes in, and another swag income golden nugget I wanted to drop in. You will decrease the difference between the waveform produced by you and the waveform produced by him. Maybe you might have the energy level to play really, really high energy, and he clearly doesn't. But by you just decreasing the difference between the two, between you and him, the tandem that is created is so fucking swaggy, for lack of better words, that the elevation that arises, not just elevating him to a higher level, not just you learning how to play a different way that you never thought, but more so the melodies. And another thing, which is going to be the next section of this, the riffs that are discovered together because they are in flux, in flow, in tandem with all parties involved. That is exactly exclusively including the natural world. Because of all these things, it is as if one song is being played. Even though, you know how like there's pictures of like people, like the Matrix, right? He moves so fast, you see like after images, right? Even though it's clearly the same person, because it's so flush, the waveforms are so flush, it is as if there is no difference. But because of the exact, what I call spatio-temporal attributes, the little things that set y'all apart, set in that way, sadly, that only makes what should have been a really shitty time the greatest thing ever. Because that moment when he strums along, it's no longer him strumming just furiously, right? But he channels it, and that's where like cool fucking shit has like my love for video games comes in, because it's like, oh yeah, dude, rage is actually really fucking awesome, and it's not wild. It's like, it's not just controlled either, because that's like disrespecting it. It's just primal. But the thing that makes it golden is the spirit, and that's kind of what I was alluding to. When one is one with that, it's only so much better than that. And hopefully these like multi-dimensional pictures really help to crystallize it. But again, if all is lost, think of, as I've mentioned, and look for the piece of content that I allude to when dealing with the equalizer. I think that's from my Ruthless Execution series, right? The EQ, how it's like they're so different. Like one has an amplitude of 10x, one has a 2x, or even at times negative 5x, which I will get to later. And yet they're literally playing the same thing, and it can only be experienced. And funny enough, when this body-mind disconnect, where people are like, what come about, I always bring up those swaggy, what is the definition in my head of a classic. It's just a game changer in every sense of the word. Fucking Kurt Cobain, right? Nirvana, like dun, 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 dun. It's like that sound should not, it's like, oh, what, how is this shrieking so harmonious? Or even the Beatles for their time, how is this swaying of the hips at the exact moment that the melody is being played, calling for that movement? Perfect, right? All these different, how is a Lil Wayne rock star in a rap song perfect and literally iconic, even though it's a rap song, but yet he's literally playing, it's like he played rock, and yet he still kept the integrity and the entity of the form that is rap. Things like that, right? Like so many things that just literally exemplify what I'm trying to say. And this has a lot of applications, which is why I was so fucking like scared, because I knew that if I didn't put it in the right way, then it would be missed, right? But this literally solves the issue that we have right now when it comes to going from 5G, which will achieve, to like 10G, right? Like 10G gigabyte data. Our main issue is collisions, right? Especially when it comes to Bluetooth technologies, right? Since they're moving so much faster, they have a shorter cycle per waveform. If you want their period, the time that it takes for one cycle of that waveform is drastically smaller than that for any other waveform. And so it causes a lot of if you want, mismatch. So how do we currently or commonly do it? We kind of cheat the system. We rig it. We say a downslope is equal to our upslope, or our upslope or our midslope when you're in between the crest and the fall is equal to the downslope, etc. But when you come to understanding of this, then you realize there's no need to fucking scope anything. You can just no scope if you just start the waveforms at the exact moment and you set each waveform to the same fucking parameters, the same amplitudes, the same periods, even the same fucking I want to use the word shifts, but it'd be more, the pictures that come about will be more tied to the period, right? Because it's sine, parentheses, theta plus x, blah, blah, blah. But the values within that parentheses, if you just set it to the same values, and then on top of that, if you just set it to the same time base, so if it's +5 there, it's +5, it's the same thing, and just let it play itself out, you'll realize that the offset, where what seems to be a, for lack of a better word, a skirt, like, sometimes it's like better to just hear the sound because you know the phenomenon I'm alluding to, right? It sounds like a skirt, like a scratching on plates is actually it just playing or responding to other waveforms currently in motion, but more importantly, and sadly, most tragically, often missed, two elements, the natural world itself, right? And why I harp on that importance of tuning or growing awareness to the four elements, those primal elements. So that's how we solve those issues. And so now, wow, like what will seem from that base point, from that perspective, what will appear as a collision will no longer be the case, because the label, we will start assessing each of those moments that we deem to label as a collision and realize that they're actually not always the same, right? Remember that wave is first and utmost light itself. That means it doesn't have the limitations that our mind has of being able to see through or being able to move through an object. Like for us, we and that's something that another video that I wanted to put out was going to address. Like we have this idea of not being able to realize that you can actually move through an object and not negate it or not rob it, for lack of a better word, of its position and, I guess, placeholder, if you will, of that particular time-space moment. You ready? Yeah. I'm ready when you are. I was just...
Oh, you should keep going?
Yeah, I told you. Like...
Oh, no.
Yeah. No. But no, like
I didn't know that was... I thought you were talking about
No. If you want to go, just tell me, like, I'll just...
Okay.
But yeah,
okay.
I just go until, like, I'll see you, like, open the door and stuff, because that's fine. But, to go back, it's all light, right? So, funny concept, it's all one. So light doesn't know barriers, it just goes. And so, that's how they act in the same way. So when we look at those moments that we so, I guess, trigger happy called collision, we stop doing that pattern interrupt and then start assessing them and realizing they're literally new moments to learn something different. What literally always looked like the same thing now starts becoming a myriad of different things happening, right? Visits from something else. The detection and it really fucking changes the game. So that's that. And again, there's so many applications. Networking, that was just one, right? Like, again, even here's and kind of what I've just been saying, like game changing, like music, like performance in its own was another. Now, like, oh wow, like because you know that your bass guitarist instrument can only play to a certain decibel. It has a certain range in which it can operate really well, and then it has a threshold where things get a little spooky. Then you don't make him play there, and it adds or reinforce another of those old school virtues that you learn when you're grounding that foundation, which is just stay in the pocket, right? You just stay in the pocket. You stay in the pocket. And even though it might not seem as if it's the sound that it's producing is has powerful, right, quote unquote, has someone who is not staying in the pocket, it's actually 10 times more impactful because it's right. And so now, oh, okay, it doesn't sound right. So then let me accompany or let me then introduce an instrument that is contrasting to the harmonious texture that it's producing at that particular time space parameter, whether it's like condition, mode of operation, blah, blah, blah. And by that, you're able to hear it that much more distinctly. And the ear is delighted because that's all it seeks to achieve, just to fill its palate, right? And that gives you a greater appreciation for the fact that we have ensembles of playing sessions that we call orchestras or even bands, right? Or even like shows, because it allows you to always get a sense of the fact that, wow, despite all of those ridiculously differing and high differences in, again, operating ranges, they still sound as if it's one entity, one audio kinesthetic entity, to the point that even the reverberating effect, remember, or refer to the reverb effect created from any wave that is propagating through a medium that I mentioned, not just in notes, but in plenty of different pieces of content. Even that reverb, that should be adding actually pain, like straight up damage to the instrument, because it's energy not being outputted well, not being mitigated, not flowing, and thus on some level dying, right? I use the concept of a dead wave, even that, by all the things that are at play in this moment in time, through that golden all mindset, spirit, inner child, desire, all those things, even gets turned around into something fucking everlastingly game changing. Like the concept of a dead note now disappears, because now you're like, oh shit, it's just the fucking pianos we have creating a drop. Like things like that, you know, and it changes everything, because now you realize, fuck, I don't have to prime my fingers for what will be 3 hours of hell, because I have to strum so hard just so I have the chance of making sure the bass, which is what most conventional says should be heard, but I just play in accordance and in flow with energy and good vibes, and now I can last like all night and more. And how much does that change in my performance, my value, my ability to control the ambient energy that is produced to elevate the good vibes of the environment, to make people not just want to fuck and continuously want to come back and fuck each other, whether drunk or not. And if drunk, it's not even a not. Like, even when you drink to the point of stupor, the fact that it's in good company preserves the integrity, the soul of that environment, to where just chaos and shit like dumb fights and all this bullshit, people pulling out their guns and blah blah blah, from occurring and being a bad thing. And even when that shit happens and this holds, that becomes more of like, wow, culture dance, like the old ages, like, bruh, check out my bow. I made it out of oak tree. This one I made it out of mahogany. Check out the dexterity. And it's like an exchange, like a pure value giving. Check out this like, oh, bruh, I know how to fix that weight issue. Like, bruh, dude, no way. That's literally what I did with my sniper rifle. I had to like saw off like all this shit, like, and I didn't tell anyone because I was scared. Blah blah blah. And nah, dude, it's actually legal. It's like blah 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 blah, blah. And it's like, well, yeah. And going back to that whole like, fuck, like life is so beautiful and we're so awesome. Manifested, displayed, and reverberated over and over and over and over again. Now, the cool thing is, everything that I just said, just because I felt like it would be a great help, will also have like a visual portion to it. So it's kind of funny. I was like, what if I just talked about it, and then when I got home or whenever I got the chance, I'll record a screen recording of me drawing out what this looks. Cause that's another great blessing. I'm so honored and grateful to have the opportunity to always be able to like draw stick figures and the picture and the doodles, and it really helps get my point across in a way that like I know that without it, it really, really would have sucked. And it's so awesome to say that's the kind of world and that's the kind of time that we live in. Because back then, when all you had was mud and it wasn't going to stick, and a person's life rested upon them seeing that, it's like a breath of fresh air. So, anyways, now we'll move on to the visual. it feels as if it's upshifting, but it's just good vibes. I'll sod it and just keeping the dance alive, and the beauty in that difference, avoiding contrast or the use of the word, allows for an appreciation for life. And to go back, those moments allow for an appreciation for moments where you meet someone and they're like, oh my God, I'm so glad I met you because finally I have someone I can practice my French with. Or I'm so glad because thanks to you, by me kind of being forced unwittingly just because of the sheer virtue of sometimes just good vibes just have their own thing. And you just go with it. Allowed me to strengthen parts of my body and exercise muscles that I didn't even know I had. And more importantly, made me such a more valuable person, player, member, or CEO, like employee, mother, father, healer, nurse, like armed forceman, like lawman, like simply because that exposure granted me the opportunity to have the honor to witness life in another way. And that is rich in of itself. And by my enriching through you, I feel like it brings me back to that feeling that we all know, where you're young and you're like, there's nothing I can do. Whether it was after meeting that first girl and you were scared to approach her and you did, and everything went well, or when you just unabashedly approach someone and just pitch them something, having 100% certainty that it would not even work, but being 1,000% confident that what mattered more was that you shot your shot and it worked so much more flawlessly than you ever thought possible. Or even just seeing that 1 pound lighter reading on the scale due to that moment the other night when you're like, nah, 1 drink of processed whatever less for me today or this week or this month, and it went such a long way. And in that same way, it's just cool to see how no matter how far we come, those timeless principles always just shine and always stay as a North Star, almost as invisible intermediaries that just literally it just removes things that was thought to be never to be broken or never to be penetrated barriers. Impossibilities literally just become yesterday's achievement. As one would feel when they first saw like the Berlin Wall fall down, or fucking, I don't know, even probably today, some guy in Asia or China seeing their walls or their doors open, or some guy in Iraq seeing his wife not wearing her burqa and actually appreciating it because it makes him see her in such a deeper light. Or seeing some Muslim love how he saw a Catholic kneel and it almost brought him to tears because that's the vision in his mind of his 5-day prayer. Or some Buddhist be completely humbled by a Catholic's way of attuning, meditating, or coming to the stillness and realization of emptiness, or what we call putting yourself in the graces of the Holy Spirit before beginning their prayer, their novena, their chaplet, right? And I don't know, I can really go on and on, but I guess my point was that these are so many things that often in the past we have come to see as bad things, right? That we have literally come to think are detriments. And it's kind of weird because I should be drawing this, but I'm not. But I think I might just stop at that. Because in the past section I talked about, I made a point that at the end, if we don't forget, wave is light, right? And what we might perceive as what we refer to or call as a collision might actually just be a reflection of our gross inability to perceive, I guess, let's call it funny peculiarities that arise when there are no limitations or when one has transcended the impedance of always thinking that the idea that two things cannot reside in the same time space without staying themselves individually or interacting amongst one another synergistically without them being able to ever so clearly be, I guess, prominently individually describable in other sense. But in other words, I talked about how a lot of times what we have just umbrellaed as collisions, waveform collisions, are things that we're slowly coming to reassess as actually individual moments that are different, that are not always what we think they are. And with our growing ability to think and visualize and exist multidimensionally will allow us to peek, not just peek, but not just peer through, but to walk through those doors that are there, that are essentially leading to higher level modalities of existence, I guess, for lack of better words. So I guess kind of, well, for some reason the idea of, and going back to classes in calculus where the teacher pulls up Wolfram alpha or even calculus 3, right, and he draws some weird form and it looks like a square that's like impeded, like, or stabbed through by some other waveform, right? And it literally looks like your eyes perceive it as something going through something else. But my point is, in actuality, it's not going through anything. It's literally just going. And our senses perceive it as through because it hasn't yet understood or learned how to conceive how something can essentially interact, or I don't want to use the word collide, but come to the physical cognition of something else. And I guess what looks like completely overshadow that something else. So what some people call penetrate or whatever, without that something else having lost its piece or its a component or that part of itself for the sake of the allowance of that something to display this thing that we call it being, it penetrating or it perforating. And I don't know if this is really making sense or if I'm really saying this well. Maybe this is why I definitely feel like it's probably the best way to pause the video and stop, or actually end this as is, hoping, I guess, that with the upcoming of other content will lend more of a chance that you ponder and kind of see where that rabbit hole is leading to. Anyways, that was extremely fucking heady. And again, I really apologize for having taken so much time. There was a lot thrown. Hopefully it was thrown in a way where you were able to follow, where you were able to actually not lose the essence of the video and the message. And we're able to get something out of it. Again, I thank you so much for giving me your time if you're still there. And I thank you and more for those that didn't, or those that left early out of the sake of maybe knowing this was not their cup of tea or something else. You mean the world, just the fact that you clicked on it. Anyways, as always, hope you guys got something out of it. Hope my shit English didn't completely fucking destroy any sort of meaning that could have been out of this video. Love y'all. Swag the fuck out. And until next time.